should warn up front, so these are all my personal views, not RB. We're on camera, so I have to be careful. I'm also rather direct, so be prepared. So RB is a very kind of entrepreneurial company. You know, we operate in 200 countries. We sell 20 million products a day. We have some pharmaceutical products, but it's mainly FMCG. So basically, we're very agile, lots of different products. We are very, very keen on digital, big data, analytics, full stop. So, you know, part of my interest in being here tonight. I guess just as a disclaimer, you know, I did a postdoc in machine learning in 2004 at Edinburgh. Big data was, you know, all the potential then. That was, 12 years ago. I still think it's got potential. I think one of the challenges that we have at RB, and I've got a few slides, but I'll sort of skip through some of them. You know, it'd be really nice to see, we do a lot of calls with companies punting APIs, digital platforms, you know, the next big analytical black box that'll solve all your problems. One of the challenges for us is, you know, we can see a value in how we can sell more products, we'll jump on it. I think as yet we haven't seen it. And I think partly because, you know, we're looking really at the bottom line. How does your product or your digital technology help us shift products? And I think in many ways the technology is great. There's lots of really clever ideas, really clever people around. But ultimately, how do we actually use that as a business? Because, you know, we need to account for how do we actually use this to sell more products. I think that in some ways quite a gap. So can I get a study buddy? Could you press the next slide? Thank you. So this is us. It's rather a busy slide. It was really just to accentuate, you know, we cover lots and lots of things. You know, we own Durex, Dettol, Nurofen, Strepsils, Skoll, French's mustard and barbecue sauce, US only. Things like Veet, Finnish dishwasher tablets. We also have lots of other things like Lemsip, Mr. Sheen, Brasso. We've got a large factory shop in the manufacturing site in Hull, and you go in and there's all these products that you see in Tesco's that actually we make, but we don't brand them. Because RB's basically is the kind of the overall corporation, so we have lots of separate, call these power brands. The point of this slide is as much that we have a very broad portfolio, you know, and what we're trying to do is, you know, we focus on particular brands, but there's lots of different products underneath. For example, Durex covers, maybe a poor example to choose. You know, for example, we do condoms, lubricants, sex toys, very much the Asian market. You know, that's a very big part of our business. So again, it's a very, very broad portfolio. So ultimately, we want to sell these to very, you know, large, diverse range of customers. So next slide, please. And I work in R&D. We can probably skip that in the interest of time. So what I'm really going to talk about is, you know, how do we make decisions? So we have an insight harvesting team, which I only came across the name the other day. It's a very good name, I think, insight harvesting. It's like a combine harvester going across a field. We've two kind of main sort of decision data spheres, if you like. So there's market insight. So ultimately, what do consumers want? So that falls into two categories. So for example, you know, do we take an existing product and do we change it? So for example, we do a lot of reformulations. And we've got Nurofen comes in many different formulations, some for children, some slow release. Mucinex is something similar. So do we take an existing product and do we change it to be more optimal in some way or target a particular audience? So that'd be, I've got a new product out of an existing product range. Or secondly, do we actually look for something completely new? I think the latter is particularly where things like big data comes in, because you know what we're looking for is what's going to be new and big in the future. What's the thing that everyone wants that no one has yet, so we can jump in? Because you know RB has a very, very large manufacturing base globally, so we can mass produce, you know, a huge range of products. So what we're always looking for is the next big thing. You know, what's the next big thing across our whole product range? So one of the questions is, well, how do we actually do that? We had a previous speaker talking about social media, big data. Yes, in theory, that's fantastic. We have all this data collected now, but the question is, from our point of view, well, how can we actually leverage that to find out what's the new thing that people want? An obvious example is, for example, looking at social media blog posts or profiles and saying, well, you know, is there some new chatter on there about something that we could actually capitalize on, and that's a product that's missing in the market? That would be the kind of theory behind it. I think to date, and we've worked with some very large companies on this, it's been quite disappointing, to put it mildly, because actually, I think for our range of products so far, you know, people don't write a Facebook about how fantastic the Dettol wipe was, you know? So again, you know, the part of the question is, well, is it suitable for some product areas and not others? And if that data is there, can we capture it? And if we can capture it, what can we do with it? Because we want to find out something new. You know, we run a lot of focus groups with lots of existing data. So if you're going to come to us with an analytics tool or a new digital platform, it has to give us something we don't already have. And it has to be something that's actually really tangible that we can say, okay, I can directly see how we're going to use that. So having a really nice algorithm, a really big data set, doesn't really do it for us. You've got to show us how we could use that as a business, because we try and be as agile as possible so we can jump on it if you can demonstrate to us that actually it really does something that we really want. Big data, I think one of the challenges of big data is more data, more noise. And I think particularly in particular segments, what you really want to find is not the whole data mining gold nugget kind of deal. But to find one gold nugget, there might be acres and acres of just coal. So I think that's part of the challenge is, this must be a crackable problem. The question is who can crack it and how. And I think today, from the companies that we speak to, and we speak to a lot of companies all the time, I think there's not something that we've seen yet that's the kind of, the sort of silver bullet for this. Next slide, please. So market insights is looking at new products. What new product lines should we be introducing based on evidence that's around? The second one is looking at new products ourselves. So we have a very interesting, very off-the-wall innovation department. So they come up with all sorts of ideas. So basically, the guys sit in a room and come up with all these new kind of ideas for pitching at different people. What we tend to do with that is we actually test it on the staff. It's fairly harmless, most of it. So what they'll say is, okay, we'll give these to 100 staff, and we'll ask them to assess it. So it might be a new piece of smart technology, might be based around Fitbit or some sort of smart technology or something more prosaic like a new type of airwick or something. But what we're asking there is we've got a new product, we want to find out from these consumers whether it's worth actually going forward to the next step and mass producing it. Obviously, there's a few steps in front of that, but the challenge there is we've actually got very small amounts of data, because we've got lots and lots of different products. So we've got this product, we test it on 20 people, 30 people. We want to say, well, based on that, should we go forward or should we not? And that's a very hard problem, because then if we go forward with it and actually it turns out to be a complete flop, it's a waste of time. So in some ways, that's the opposite from this one. This is big data, this is small data. So we've lots and lots of small data. So we've lots and lots of interviews, qualitative data about different products. So one of the challenges there is, can we actually pull that together so it's more robust? For example, do we know that generally people don't like, a particular texture or a particular smell, and we can translate that into multiple products? So rather than having lots of different discrete data sets, can we do something about all the little data sets? So, from big to small, really. Next slide, please. So how do we sell products? Ultimately, it's about product differentiation, pretty obvious. We want to say, our product is better than somebody else's product. For that, we need data. So, we run clinical trials, we do a lot of lab formulations, consumer studies, scientific literature. So we need the science behind it, but also we obviously need what the consumer wants. You see a lot of these advertising campaigns, for example, this is Gaviscon, lasts 2 times longer than antacids. So, to get that piece of evidence there with the science behind it, but actually we have to find something that actually resonates with the consumers. Because it has to be something that when you go into Boots or into Tesco's, resonates with you. So there's a combination of data from the consumer to say, actually, that's a claim that we think would resonate. And then there's also the science to say, well, actually, that's true. We can actually publish an article to say, actually, that is true. Next slide, please. So product claims are quite complicated because they vary by country and by product type enormously. So what you can say about one claim in one country, you can't say in another, which becomes very, very complicated. By and large, when we want to claim about a product, it's a complex decision process because we need the science, we want it to be of interest to the consumer and credible to the consumer. Consumers are not stupid. You say something's a wonder drug, they will not believe you. And the last bit is the tricky part, particularly when a global company, because what we want to say is, when you get a license for a product with a pharmaceutical, you've got a label. You generally can't advertise beyond the label, but that's for pharmaceuticals. When you go to things like vitamins, devices like condoms, tomato sauce, it's very different as to what you can actually say. And each country has its own regulator about what you can say or not about your product. And what we want to do is differentiate our product from somebody else's. Next slide, please. So if you take product types, for example, we've got painkillers, dishwasher tablets, condoms. It all comes down to, what can we say in a country that's going to differentiate our product? A good example is vitamins. In the US, we have a large vitamin company. We can basically say what we want about vitamins. That's the legal framework is we can say what we want. However, it's a big caveat because they're standard ingredients, so they're not toxic. So it's the standard ingredients are well known. So we can make a claim as to what we want, but then what happens is a company will challenge you. So if you say your cod liver oil is the most fantastic thing since sliced bread, then a competitor company can then take you to court. So, and then they can win damages against you. So in that example, it's less the regulator that gets involved, but more actually, you've got to be careful what you say, because then if you actually upset another company, they'll then set the lawyers on you. So that's more a kind of, it's a different framework, for example, from pharmaceuticals which are the most regulated. And then you've got things like personal protection masks, insecticides, which are kind of in the middle. And each country varies. What you can say in one country about a product is massively different for the same product in a different country. So again, it's a very complex decision process, all based around data. It's the data we've got and whether that data will satisfy the different country regulatory authorities. Dishwashing is a really good example. That's very, very heavily science-backed. The sort of thing you see with the two lasagna Pyrex dishes? To actually do that, there's a formal recipe you have to follow in terms of the ingredients. And it's all very, very lab-focused, so it's actually a proper scientific test. So, there's a lot more science in there than you might actually at first expect. Last slide, I think. Okay, so I've basically just given a few examples. I've focused on a particular area. We do have, lots of manufacturing sites. An awful lot of our analytics is around developing new processes to make things, because we make so many things. We need an efficient platform to actually make, bottles, tablets, strepsils, etc. So there's a lot of analytics in that, also in the sort of market insight stuff as well. And again, I think because we've got such a diverse product range, there's lots of possibilities for different types of data to be used. The question is, how do we use it optimally to actually really make our business move forward? Because it's all about trying to actually sell more products used on good science and good data. I think that's about me. I was on to time.
Thank you very much. Time for a couple of questions. Try and keep it brief, but another couple of questions for Fraser, if we could.
Yep.
You seem to be doing very well from what you're saying, but you're still looking for the golden goose, or whatever it is, in big data and analytics. Describe, other than it could help us sell more, what are you actually looking for? What's missing?
I guess part of it is we'll know it when we see it. I think part of it, we have RB runs many different product lines. We do lots of consumer work directly with consumers. We do lots of product testing. So we do the kind of traditional that manufacturing does. I guess because my post is relatively new in the company as well as a global post. What we're trying to find is whether we can do this more efficiently and better because there's so much data around. But I think at the moment it's probably fair to say we haven't really seen something that says, oh, we really want to jump on that. For example, we're looking at things even like the Apple development kit, which has got a lot of health applications, tying it into apps. I think in some ways it's a very open environment. I guess what we're looking for is something that can really help us, in even just one product line, actually, sell more product, get more interest. Because knowing things like the profile of our consumers, I think by and large we know that. So it has to be something new and added value for us. But I think that, it's a very wide scope. We do lots of calls with very diverse companies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Do you think maybe the solution rather than big data is actually to work out more valuable data? So look at the data, the metadata, to work out what data would be more important.
I would personally say it's always quality over quantity. Yeah. I guess the challenge we have just now is that when we go and get our own data, we ensure the quality. So if we run a clinical study or we go and do consumer interviews, it's all about quality for us because we can control it. The advantage of big data is you get volumes cheaply. So I think the trade-off there is actually you get an awful lot of data, but so you want more quality within. If you imagine you've got terabytes of data, you want at least 100 gigabytes of quality. Whereas at the moment we can go and collect 2 megabytes of quality without any problem. So I think there's definitely quality over quantity, but ideally we want both and cheaply. Anybody else?
How much of the data that you get is digital these days? How much is still done in a traditional format?
I don't think we've much. Because even in our clinical trials, it's all electronic data these days. So again, we do, with the qualitative data, we might do interviews or questionnaires, but then they'd be transcribed. So we don't have archives full of paper. We're a very kind of paper light office, full stop. So again, it's effectively all digital.
Mm. But it might be the result might be digital, but the sort of traditional form of getting sort of insight, shopper insight, and all that kind of thing. It's a very traditional, old school clipboard approach to.
Well, these days you use an iPad or something, yeah. But again, it's that. But I think that that's tried and tested and it works, and it's the quality because we can go and interview people, and we've got an app on our iPad or Android or whatever, and we've designed a questioning, we get what we want. So it might be small samples, but actually it's tailored to our needs. Whereas if we go on the social media or blogs, we're basically scraping through lots of data. And there's quite some natural language processing companies recently, and again, they show us lots of information, but it's not as quality as we could get, for a lot less cost by going and doing it ourselves. So in some ways, I think you do need the quality and the quantity combined, because it has to be better than what we can do it for ourselves just now.
There's a move from trying to assess and analyse people's past performance and therefore trying to decide what it is that they might buy, to a much more positive sort of the intention economy of people actually volunteering information and saying, this is what I'm looking for. How are you reacting to that?
I think the projects I know about, we're trying to get into more things like predictive analytics. So based on people's behaviour, for example, if we know what they bought in the past, can we then work on some algorithms to actually suggest new products to them? So it's not quite the same thing, but it's more trying to take it, we'll look at what they bought in the past, and can we actually do that intelligently to suggest something in the future? So that is, there's a couple of projects I know about that we're doing that sort of analysis. But again, I think I think my impression is that as a company, it's fairly early days. I think we're very interested, very fast moving. So it's almost, if people can come to us with something interesting, we're glad to talk to them. But again, it has to be something we can see that we can commercialise.
Do you think that ultimately you'll sell more directly to the consumer and bypass the distribution network, the retailers?
I think that's.
In the end.
I think it varies globally enormously. So, for example, I think in Asia, my understanding is an awful lot of it is entirely e-commerce, whereas in Northern Europe it's less so. And again, there's all sorts of complexities because again, it's supply side, it's also margins if you go to different suppliers, etc. So it's it's a very multifactorial decision. But I think also there's cultural differences as well. My understanding is the Asian markets are very, very happy and very progressive in terms of online shopping for everything. It's like in Japan where you can go to supermarkets 10 years ago and it was actually all automated. I think in some ways, and again, RB is looking for, it's very much global. It's not focused on Europe. It's not focused on the UK. It's it's particularly Asia, Africa, South America.
Thanks very much.